engaging celebrity interviews, exciting updates from Christian filmmakers, movie reviews so you can choose your movies wisely, and so much more here on Faith on Film with Isaac Hernandez and Holly McClure.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Faith on Film. I'm Isaac Hernandez, your host, and here with my co-host, Holly McClure, who, by the way, seems to be very excited about today's show. Holly, what's got you so excited about today?
Isaac, I met this guy at a gala event that he threw, and I'm telling you, this is a patriot filled with love for his country, for fellow man. He is a prayer warrior. He was a J6er who got arrested after that event, got thrown into jail, spent 3.5 years, and President Trump pardoned him. And he has a story to tell. You and I had a chance to interview him. It was a phenomenal interview. Listen, everyone, you do not want to miss this show, and you're going to want to pass it forward and play it forward to people that are in the military, to patriots, to everyone. It's got miracles in it. You won't believe the story.
Absolutely. And of course, he has a special place. He has a special place in my heart because just like my son, he was an Army Ranger, as my son was. So
That's right.
Very excited about today's interview, folks. Check this interview out.
With Robert Morss.
Robert, welcome to Faith on Film.
Welcome, Robert. Welcome. I had a chance to meet you at a fundraiser for Leggo Man Films Productions. It was like a whole different thing. But it was so much fun meeting you and your friends, and I found out all about you and thought we got to have you on Faith on Film because you are definitely a man of faith, definitely going to be in film, and you've got a story to tell, don't you?
Yes, ma'am. Well, I appreciate being included. Thank you for having me on. And I definitely have a story. It's kind of wild. It's not your average story that you hear every day. But yeah, it was an absolute honor and a pleasure to have you there at the Crema Lux Gala for Leggo Man Productions at Capernaum Studios. We will always be honored and in your debt for allowing that to take place there. But I'm so glad we got to meet. And yes, we have lots to talk about. I don't think we have enough time.
I know. We were there for a couple of hours and still didn't feel like I'd heard all your story. But here, folks, for those of you who don't know, we did an introduction, but, you know, Robert was an integral part of January 6th. I mean, integral in that he was one of those that got arrested and put in prison. And I'm telling you, let's go back and start on that day, Rob. First of all, you know, just your passion and why you went that day and walk us through what went on that led to having and then we'll go from there. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you again for the opportunity. I will say that rewinding back to January 6th kind of requires a little bit more of a rewind. I know that I was a Ranger in 2nd Ranger Battalion. I deployed to Afghanistan 3 times on 3 combat trips. But my first deployment to Afghanistan, I learned that the next generation is going to lose this republic if the devastation of Afghanistan follows me home, and that they don't understand how to keep it is, I think, one of the biggest reasons why I'm doing what I'm doing now. But rewinding even further than that, I left home at 17 to join the Army. And I left Nevada, it's where I'm born and raised, and it was a beautiful state. I grew up like 45 minutes away from Lake Tahoe, and I love my home. I love my country. I love my people. But I also know that it requires each and every individual to take pride in their home in order to keep their home. And so, if you read the preamble of the Constitution, the safeguards for liberty are always in the hands of we the people. Everybody wants to reference those 3 words, but not many people want to take it seriously. And I think that's what's at stake, is people taking their responsibility to keep their home intimately. And so I decided to dedicate my life to being a teacher after my first deployment to Afghanistan. I used my GI Bill, went to Penn State, and I was at Penn State when Trump ran for president the first time. I ended up being the chief of a Republican club on campus that was the only one willing to endorse Donald Trump for president. And I guess I got involved in politics in a major way then. And fast forward to 2020, my senior year, that's when I watched the pandemic. That's when I watched the vaccine mandates. That's when I watched the election get stolen. And I'll never forget it. Because I was watching the election results. I was awake at 3 o'clock in the morning in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I watched those numbers flip. You can't tell me what I didn't see. And I knew that we were in trouble. And so I had known that people were being attacked and assaulted and firebombed and stabbed at the Jericho March and the Million MAGA March, two rallies that preceded the January 6th Stop the Steal rally. So I dressed up in a uniform that I deployed to Afghanistan all 3 times in for 2 reasons. One, to show that I'd already invested sweat and blood equity into the outcome of my country, but then also to protect my people. That's all I wanted to do. Well, because of the way I was dressed and because of how that day ended up being a designed lobster trap, I got sucked into what's known as the hero's journey, where for the next 3.5 years after my arrest on June 11th, 2021, I would be struggling in the underworld. I would be behind bars and my constitutional rights shredded. My hope for freedom dashed away. My family betrayed me, and many of my friends walked away from me. But the one thing that kept me going was the fact that Jesus Christ doesn't change, and his promises and his love endures forever. And so regardless of the things that I had to endure, very much like Alexander Solzhenitsyn, I found more Jesus Christ in the middle of hell and the belly of the beast, just like he did. And ironically, many months after my pardon, my second book drops, James O'Keefe picks it up and he compares Still There to the Gulag Archipelago. So there's a lot of things that are circulating around the story for God to be glorified and magnified. And I'm just honored to be a vessel for that. And now I'm shifting my fire from being an impact in one high school history classroom, like I used to in Pittsburgh, to having an impact in classrooms all across the country, if not the West, which is making films that are gritty, edgy, in your face, violent, real films with real stories, with real loss and tragedy, but that also honor God. Nothing against the movies that have come and gone in the past, but I think what people really need right now is a movie that they could relate to, they can see themselves in, and they see a movie that says, you know what, if those people had their backs up against the wall, they were outnumbered, and they still decided to do the right thing and honor God, regardless of the odds against them, maybe I can too. And so as you watched at the Prima Lux Gala on January 9th, that's what me and my company is dedicated to doing. And so we've got 2 movies in the works right now. One is a January 6th themed love story based off of my story and that of my fiance's story as we both persevered through the January 6th saga. And then we have a Roman epic that we're going to do right after that. And that one's focused on a man who really did live over 2,000 years ago, who also watched his republic die, but you don't know his name because every government since his death has hidden it from you so that nobody stands up to tyranny the way that he actually did. And those types of stories is exactly what the people want, they're craving for, and that's exactly what Leggo Man Productions is about to deliver. So in a very short amount of time, I think I've told you quite a bit.
I love that. I love it. Okay, I want to go back. Let's unpack. Thank you for doing that. So let's unpack the first part. Let's unpack on January 6th. Why were you arrested and what you saw from your perspective, what happened?
I only went there to protect folks from Antifa. What I did see, though, was Antifa dressed as Trump supporters. They had the red MAGA hats on. They had the Trump hoodies. But they were definitely in league with the anarchist group Antifa, who only wants to watch the world burn. I was walking past FBI agents that were disguised in the crowd as Trump supporters, people with earpieces on. And in the first book that I wrote while I was in prison, actually, me and my co-author, Kelly Meggs, smuggled the book One Question Remains out of prison. And it's the only book on your bookshelf that can boast it was smuggled out of an American prison. If you go on Amazon right now and type in One Question Remains, it can be yours. We also exposed how we were walking past disguised Ukrainian soldiers from the Azov Brigade, also disguised as Trump supporters in the crowd of January 6th. So there is so much more that meets the eye, especially from the media's narrative. I watched old ladies get shield bashed by police officers. I watched Capitol police officers arc their grenade launchers so that the flashbangs that they were firing would detonate by the faces of the women and children that were taking refuge behind the bodies of men that were supposed to protect them. I saw men get enticed into violence. I saw people on megaphones daring the crowd to do something that they didn't plan on doing that morning when they woke up to just attend the next Trump rally, the only Trump rally that ever got violent. I had a job interview the very next day. So taking over the United States government was not on my schedule or on my bingo card, as much as, you know, the media would have you believe. And so, but what I did see was true, authentic patriots who had suffered throughout the whole pandemic, trying to survive, desperately showing up in the amount of 2 million, by the way, there's 2 million people there who were excited to see some kind of hope and reprieve from the scourge of tyranny that we would undoubtedly have to suffer through underneath the imposter president. Those people were placed in between a rock and a hard place, between FBI agents, Antifa members, and a Capitol Police stirring up the violence so that January 6th could have the appearance that it did on national television from clip videos. But they don't show you Roseanne Boylan being beaten to death by Lila Morris, who is a murderer and she's still walking free, who also got rewarded with Super Bowl tickets immediately after killing an innocent individual. You don't know Kevin Grayson's name. You don't know Benjamin Phillips' name. That we lost 4 patriots that day. Some people know about Ashley Babbitt, but a lot of folks don't know that not a single police officer was killed that day either. Not a single one of those 5 police officers that Joe Biden incorrectly states died on January 6th has January 6th, 2021 on their death date of their tombstone. So there's a lot of lies that get exposed in the book, One Question Remains. There's a lot of horrific stories and heroic stories that get brought to light in that book that I referenced that James O'Keefe is a big fan of, still there, both are on Amazon. But what I saw on January 6th is not what they wanted to show you on live television so that it could be used against the American people.
Wow. So listen, first of all, thank you for your service. You guys hold a very special place in my heart because my son was, by the way, also an Army Ranger stationed there at Fort Benning. So you know, you guys are just a real special group of people to me. That, you know, you said something interesting. You said that you wrote one of those books while you were in prison. Yeah. That reminds me a little bit, of course, of the Apostle Paul, who wrote several books of the Bible while in prison. Now, I know you probably feel like, well, I don't want to, it's not like I enjoyed being in prison or anything, but who enjoys that, right? But do you think that perhaps in the back of your mind, do you feel like maybe all this was part of God's plan? He, for whatever reason, had you go through this to write a book that maybe you couldn't have written before? Not that you couldn't have, but the experience that you went through there, you wouldn't have been able to.
Exactly. Well, this is why we're taught to glory in our sufferings and to persevere through our sufferings, is because they're actually withdrawing from us a better version of ourselves. And if we are to be like Christ, there's no way to be like Christ without suffering. You know, you can recite, you know, his qualifications like looking at a baseball card, sure. But to know Jesus and to be like Jesus is to suffer like Jesus, who was betrayed, who was jailed, who was ridiculed, who was written off, and ultimately had to, you know, pay a debt that other people should have had to have paid. I know that I became a better man as a result of this. You know, what men always intended for evil, God always intended for good. And though me and God had some tough moments, like Job and God did back in the day, I always trusted him. And there's such a powerful, I mean, I will say this, and I'm not trying to get too emotional right now, but there are certain scriptures and certain worship songs I can no longer say out loud because I'll just end up crying through it because of how visceral the journey was. But in Job 13:15, it says, though you slay me, still I trust you. And I was being filleted wide open. And in order to trust God through that process, it was definitely a learning curve for sure. And I don't want to be compared to Paul whatsoever, though I feel as if I can relate to some of the things that Paul or Jonah or Job or Joseph had to persevere through myself. My job is to make sure that the next one in line is armed with the sword of the Spirit and all the other pieces of armor from Ephesians 6 through my example and the example of other men that have come before them. That's why I'm compelled to make movies that honor God. That's why I had to write these books. That's why I had to persevere under pressure. But that's also why I had to go through the pressure cooker in the first place. You know, we cannot shake our fist at God when he puts us through the furnace, because that's how silver is refined. That's how gold is refined. And because God wants us to achieve our highest potential in this life, suffering is the way in order to accomplish that. Jesus was not put at the right hand of the Father because he kicked his feet up and chilled with prostitutes. He was put at the right hand of God because of his sacrifice. And ultimately, that's what we're supposed to be doing. And so, and that's why I know that so many doors have been opening since, is because it's really not about me. It's about Jesus and trying to honor him and glorify him. And if I can extend that wisdom and knowledge and experience to the next generation, then I will have proved my enemies wrong and I will have proved God right.
Tell us some of what you went through, because you didn't just sit in a nice little cell with nice little meals and treated kindly every day, were you? Or nor any of the other J6ers?
No, we were definitely targeted for our beliefs. We were held hostage. Our lawyer visits, our hygiene, our doctor visits, and many other amenities, if you can call it that, were held from us unless we took the vaccine. We couldn't even get haircuts unless we took the vaccine. So, all right, I won't cut my hair. We had the whole weight of the federal government ruining us. There was no access to evidence in order to fight our case. It was pretty bad. But the day that I was arrested, June 11, 2021, luckily didn't happen in front of the high school that I was teaching at, though it was the last day of school. And I learned once I finally got my discovery a year and a half into my incarceration, which is illegal, that the FBI waited until the last day of school to arrest me because they wanted to hurt me more. And that was the point of it all. So when I was arrested, they used the exact same tactics that Rangers would on a kill capture mission on any kind of raid in any kind of compound. I was dressed up in a suit and tie, ready to go to the last day of school and, participate in the graduation ceremony that many of the senior class had invited me to. And right before I touched the handle of my Jeep, that's when 17 loaded rifles come out of their hiding places and are aimed at me in order to make sure that I was arrested. And so it was a very sad time, though oddly enough, there was a little bit of relief because up until that point, I knew that there was a Damocles sword above me and I was being hunted by the FBI. I was on the FBI's most wanted list, and I have no criminal history whatsoever, served my country honorably, and yet somehow now I'm like public enemy number one because I believe in the Constitution. That's how far we fell as a nation. It was very sad. But the day of my arrest, and this, leads to that other story, it was interesting. So the FBI is passing very dangerous objects in my apartment, like the Holy Bible or the Constitution. And they come across a nuclear stockpile of Legos. Yeah, I know. I brought Legos into the classroom to help the students kind of calm down, and but I also love Legos. I was playing with them the other night because I think they awaken the engineer in all of us, and I have no shame in that. But when the FBI came to my apartment, they find in my possession what they perceive as the holy grail of January 6th, which is none other than a Lego model kit of the United States Capitol that Lego distributed and manufactured and dispersed. So they see this Lego set of the Capitol, and then they know that I was at the Capitol on January 6th. They then claim that I am the architect of the insurrection. They try to pin the whole thing on me, and they say that I used this Lego set as a blueprint for the riot for 2 million people somehow. That's the story that they give the judge. The judge says, how is this possible if the Legos are still in the box? So here's an unopened box of Legos that somehow, using the power of my mind, I planned an entire insurrection without even opening the cardboard with a plastic children's toy. So I'm either a Jedi Master or the FBI is lying. So,
well, how were you convicted if the judge said, how could they give you to use that? I mean, how did they convict you of that? You spent 3.5 years in there, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Well, it gets even worse. So one of the charges that they used to convict me that carries up to 20 years was a charge that they cooked up in the old Enron case. It's the 1512 charge, which was thrown out by the Supreme Court in the summer of 2024. So the very charge that carried the time that I was doing was literally evaporated from the docket. So I'm doing time for a charge that no longer exists. Like the whole situation was absolute garbage. The 1512 charge is an obstruction of an official proceeding charge. And yet I wasn't even on Capitol grounds at the time of the official proceeding. That had been concluded before I even set foot on the Capitol. So it was an absolute mess from the get-go. But the good news is when they find this Lego set and the whole Leggo Man moniker is born, it had kind of like a little bit of comedy, and it is a funny story. But there's another reason why this is significant. Everyone in this call believes in the God who renames men. Abram was renamed Abraham after he passed the test of faith. Jacob, after wrestling with the angel of the Lord all night long, was renamed Israel. And Saul was renamed Paul after his Damascus conversion. And a buddy of mine who is an incredible guy, also a January 6er, working in the company, confronts me one day because, we're working on this Roman epic and we're talking about Latin. He asks me, what does Leggo Man mean in Latin? I said, I have no idea. Well, he says that Leggo Man in Latin means I anoint men or I assemble men. So I have been renamed a name that means I'm going to anoint men or I'm going to assemble men. So what better name than to give a production company that's going to anoint and assemble men so that they can keep this republic and honor God, all things like, wow.
Wow. What a great part of that story. Oh my gosh. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And you met your fiance because just real quickly, because we're running out of time, but because she also was a J6er, right?
Yes. Yeah. So she was on the run for a little over a year. She was running around in the woods of Florida and Georgia and North Carolina like a female Jason Bourne, did the whole, cutting of the hair, disguise, public library bit. And when they finally caught up to her with the helicopter, she did 13 months in the DC Gulag. So she's a tough chick. And she's got my heart. I love that girl so much. And that's ultimately what's going to be, our focus for the first movie that Leggo Man Productions is going to put out there, is that love on the run scenario where the invisible string theory is in full effect. We almost meet, but we don't. Our situations are identical, but we don't meet. And at the end, Olivia and Robert Morss fall in love after everything that they had gone through, and we live happily ever after. And that's the story that America needs right now. That's the story that's really going to get things going in the right direction to fix history, but then also to inspire people not to give up. So you can find our progress on LeggoManProductions.com, still there. And One Question Remains you can find on Amazon. And, we're looking for all the help we can get to get these kind of movies in the eyes and the audience of the next generation so that they want to keep this republic as much as we do. And so if you want to support, go to LeggoManProductions.com with 2 G's, and, we'll see you at the movies.
And I want you to tell one more real quick important thing. The reason you wrote the book Still There, tell why Still There is important to you.
Yes. Okay. Oh, how could we forget? Because you were there for that.
I was there for that. This is an important part.
Yes. So I get to the DC Gulag where there's a bunch of January 6ers, and there was a tradition of singing the national anthem at 9 p.m. And for about the first week, after wiping tears away from my face and finding my tribe, singing the national anthem in the middle of hell, I tweaked it a little bit and I started screaming in the middle of the national anthem. And a lot of these guys confronted me after the fact and they said, dude, what are you doing? We just got done with the whole Colin Kaepernick garbage, being disrespectful to the national anthem and taking a knee. Why would you be screaming in the middle of our sacred national anthem? And I said, I am going to be screaming the words "Still There" of the national anthem from here on out, because my faith in my God and my love of my country and my belief that we are going to see these days renewed is still there. And so from that moment on, everybody within the pod, they understood. And the tradition was born. And so if you're listening to Justice for All, the song that Donald Trump put the Pledge of Allegiance with the J6 choir, you can hear us scream the word "Still There." I started that because I still believe, even after everything that we've been through, that we can survive. If we don't give up, we will witness the American Renaissance, because our hope in our God and our trust that these days will be renewed is still there. That's why the national anthem will be sang differently. That's the title of the book. And that's what you got to witness, Holly.
I did. That was an important part, because that's what the name of that book is. I've loved having you on. You got to come on and talk about your movies the minute you get them where they're going to be seen. We've got to have you back to tell this story more.
This is a good time. Thank you guys for your help. And we'll see you at the movies. We're going to make an impact forever.
All right, folks, we'll be right back after these messages.
You go to church?
Oh, well, I was raised in it.
Isn't this the church?
I saw you with those Jesus freaks. Are you one of them?
It can't be.
I noticed you were raising your hands during the singing.
Yes, ma'am. I was feeling the presence of the Lord.
We don't do that here.
She's a charismaniac. I don't want them influencing these kids.
Actually, if I could invite anyone who hasn't accepted the Lord as their personal savior, just come right here to the front.
So everybody's a pastor now.
Please don't say that where we're going.
Why do you feel called to be a missionary?
You know, I worry about those kids. Let the fire go out of their hearts.
What makes Capernaum Studios different from other movie studios? We believe in empowering filmmakers to make stories that matter, inspire, uplift, and transform lives. From historically authentic sets to state-of-the-art, fully equipped sound stages, we offer immersive LED and green screen stages, ICVFX virtual production, period to modern sets, a first-century village featured in The Chosen, and much more. We provide everything filmmakers need to focus on what matters in making their vision a reality, producing meaningful content affordably without compromising creativity. Discovering what's possible when creativity meets purpose. Capernaum Studios, empowering filmmakers to make dreams a reality.
That was so, that was so interesting, Isaac. You and I could have gone for another half hour. Really, it was
Could have.
I mean, I didn't really want to stop him because he had so much, and not just about what his journey, but how he met the brothers that were also fellow people who had been arrested that day and in other days, and his, his fiance, his future wife, but got a chance to know these people who were just ordinary people out there enjoying it, supporting Trump, excited that Trump got elected. They had no ulterior motives in their heart, and then the government got a hold of them. And I'm telling you, the evil that took place under the Biden regime and what they did to them. And thank God President Trump, pardoned him. But they were saying how they're concerned if the Republicans don't get back into this next presidency, that things could be reversed. I mean, they don't know. The Democrats hold a grudge. And I'm not trying to say this about every Democrat out there. I'm talking about the ones that are involved with January 6th that were in charge of that. So, we got to pray for Robert and, for his future films that hopefully tell stories and win hearts. And I love that you have that connection with your son. Wasn't that great?
It was fantastic. And yeah, you know what? We're just going to have him back because we definitely ran out of time on today's show. So folks, just remember to check out our website, faithonfilmtv.com. That's faithonfilmtv.com. And of course, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and X at Faith on Film. Holly, we'll see you again next week.
Blessings, everyone.
Write to us at faithonfilmtv@gmail.com. That's faithonfilmtv@gmail.com. And follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and X at Faith on Film TV. Also, visit our website, faithonfilmtv.com. That's faithonfilmtv.com, where you'll find links to all of our past shows and much more.